Here we go. All right, so today we'll be talking about something very dear to our students and to us. Meaningful communication, that's the topic for today, okay? And think of the opportunities we have for this meaningful communication to happen in class. I think that for us to start, it would be important to go back to BNCC and read a little bit more about it, okay, to understand what the whole plan, the project is about, and then move on from there. So I brought some parts of BNCC for us to look at together today. The first one is specifically about the speaking class. Remember that now we have 5 aspects we work with, right? When you read the BNCC. So I brought this one that is specifically about the speaking. So here's what it says. O eixo-oralidade envolve práticas de linguagem em situações de uso oral da língua inglesa, com foco na compreensão ou escuta, e na produção oral ou a fala, articuladas pela negociação, na construção de significados partilhados pelos interlocutores e ou participantes envolvidos, com ou sem contato face a face. This idea of face-to-face or not is because we consider other moments of communication, like when we show a video, when we listen to something and we can't really see the person there. But notice that we have this part here that talks about negotiating meaning, building meaning together with the people that are interacting, the people that are participating here in the same conversation. So this is the idea when we think about meaningful communication. It's something that the students in class are going to share, they're going to exchange ideas, they're going to learn from each other, they're going to get more information about each other and be able to express themselves, to build the communication together. So it's something they won't do alone. They have to interact with the other to be able to have this meaningful communication. So starting from there are very explicit moments when we look at the materials we use for communication. I brought 2 just for us to see as examples. So for example, when you look at this one from 2nd grade, there is a very explicit moment for students to interact and communicate. They're going to talk about their backpacks, what they carry in their backpacks, and ask each other and compare if they have the same items or not. They can talk to one classmate or 2, have it in pairs or trios, up to the teacher and to the dynamics of the class. Another example of a very explicit opportunity for meaningful communication, you see here in Fundamental 2, when they are in the 7th grade, you have a moment here, work with a partner, ask questions about his or her routine, and then switch roles. So they're going to ask each other about the time they get up, go to school, have lunch, do homework, and etc. And also find something in common. You can see here on the right, they say, think about your routine. Write one routine you have in common with your partner. So after interacting, talking, and learning about their partner, they can think of what they have in common. Moments like this, you can find lots throughout the books we use in Fundamental 1 and Fundamental 2. So there are many explicit opportunities for meaningful communication. We're going later to talk about the moments that are not so explicit, okay? But let's start with these ones. Even when we talk about these explicit moments, something that is key for us to do is to plan. We have to plan these moments. And I remember this was something we discussed at one of the sessions we had at EG a while ago, right? So remember that. First of all, you need to identify this communicative activity that you have in the lesson. Okay, so for example, I found that one where students describe what they carry in the backpack, or that one in the 7th grade when they talk about their routines. So you look at the lesson you are going to prepare and you can identify a moment there for students to talk. Usually there's something like about you, or talk to a partner, work with a partner, or tell your friends about. So there's something in the instruction that indicates it's a moment for students to interact. So that is the first step. I find this opportunity here. Now I have to think of the expected outcome. And here are some questions that can help us. What is the communicative goal of this lesson? How can students communicate in a natural and meaningful way in the context provided by the lesson? So again, let's go back to the two examples we have there. The lesson about the backpack, I'm enabling my students to describe what they take to school, to say the objects they carry in their backpacks, to talk about school materials. This is the objective I have for the lesson. And then I have to think of, they are second graders. What kind of conversation can they have about backpacks, right? Because the level they are in, the age they are, I have to consider that too. So these questions can help me think of this expected production, expected result. The same goes for the 7th grade, the example we have of the 7th grade. In this lesson, I am enabling my students to talk about routine, to say the time they do everything, to describe the activities they have every day. So what kind of conversation, natural and according to their level, I think my 7th graders could have here. And then a suggestion that I give is always to try and write down this conversation. Just putting it on paper makes it easier for us to decide how we want to organize the lesson, how we are going to help students achieve this production that we are expecting. So I'm going back to the example I showed you before. So this is the one about backpacks, the 2nd grade lesson. One possible conversation that I imagined for second graders would be something like this. So tell me about your backpack. Do you have, and then the items in the book, right? Do you have a ruler? Do you have scissors, a sharpener, etc.? And then the other student would say, yes, I do. Student A could make a comment like, nice, cool. Or if student B says, no, I don't. Okay. And continue the conversation. What about you? Do you have, and back to the items we have here in the book. And to finish the conversation, thank you. Go ahead.
I see just a little problem here. Especially this year, the students from the 2nd grade, they can't read.
Yes.
Like is expect to at this moment because of the gap we have last year.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, but it's
not really fluent in reading, right?
No.
Yeah, I know. Not. So this is a good thing for you to make choices. So for example, if I believe that, so tell me about your backpack would be too long for my 2nd graders to say, depending on the level they are in, I can change a little bit. I can have only, so do you have,
yeah,
and make it smaller. The same for the comments, because remember, we are trying to think of a natural conversation. So if you think of a natural conversation, you don't go to someone and say, do you have a ruler?
Yeah.
You start in a different way, like, hey, so, or saying the name, right? Amanda, do you have a ruler? So you can change that a little bit. And the same for the comment. You can give only one. So for example, if you think that your students can cope with nice. So in this class, we're just going to teach them how to say nice to show that they are paying attention to what the other student is saying. So it could be nice and okay. Only these two options, right? If you think that what about you would be too much, we can change for and you.
And you. Yeah.
And you. Do you have, and go back, right? And later we are going to see some of the steps. And I think there is one step that can help you with the challenge that the written form can be, to focus a little bit more on how it sounds and not so much on the written language, okay, for them to study. But you see, when you think of a natural conversation and you try to write it down, you think of the beginning, you think of how the conversation could go in terms of making comments, showing interest, and how they could finish the conversation, saying thank you, okay, goodbye, nice talking to you. Then you can make some choices. but you make it more meaningful, more natural for them to be able to communicate with each other. So this is the idea. Look at the activity. Try to understand what the objective is, considering the lesson you're teaching, the context you have, and then write down a conversation that would be okay for that level and for that group. Because you know that sometimes you have, for example, segundo A e segundo D that are completely different. So you may do it some way with your second graders in the morning and a different way with your second graders in the afternoon. So always think about the students.
Right.
Let's see the example for the 7th grade when they are talking about their routines. So it could be something like this. So tell me about your routine. What time do you? And one of the items we have here, get up, go to school, have lunch. I usually, the activity at the time. And then again, encourage students to show interest, to make comments, so they can say, oh, that's so early, or that's kind of late, or me too, not me. And again, depending on the group, you can work with one strategy, one expression, like me too, not me, showing that they have something common or showing that they have something different. Or that's so early, that's kind of late, because you want to practice the words early or late. So make a choice, always thinking about the student. So this exercise of writing the conversation down will help you think of your students, see how much they can cope with. Maybe with a group, you go a little bit further, you walk the extra mile, and with another group, you make the task a little bit easier for them to be able to perform, okay? All right, and then we have this conversation in mind. We are going to teach this lesson, so we need some steps for this speaking moment we have in class. And here's a suggestion of how you can set students up for success. I think if you manage to follow these 4 steps, students are more likely to speak English, to communicate with each other. You'll be able to pair them up or put them in trio and see the activity actually happening and students interacting with each other. So let's have a look at these 4 to have it in mind. The first one, we always need to set the context of the conversation and the task, the objective of the task, in a meaningful way, in an engaging way. For example, if I say, okay, let's practice. And if I say, so let's see what you have in your backpacks. And if your friends have the same, which one sounds more engaging?
Yeah, the second one, sure.
Yeah, so then these minor changes can help a lot. Get students curious about what they're going to discuss, get them to start predicting what's coming, like, do you think that Amanda and Roberta have the same things, or do they have lots of different materials in their backpack? Let's see. So let's try to get them curious, to get them engaged, for them to really feel like talking. I want to talk because I want to know something about my friend. So that's step 1. And it doesn't have to be something really long. It's 1 or 2 sentences that you say together with your body language, with your facial expression, that is going to get them interested in what they're going to talk about. The second one is support for your students. So you say, okay, let's talk about what you carry in your backpack. All right. What is the question we ask? So try to elicit the language again. Always give students the chance first to say, look, what is the question I use to know what someone has in their backpacks? Or if someone has an eraser, a ruler, and etc. Try to see if they can give you the question, do you have? Or the other example, to know the time my friends do their routine activities. How can I ask this in English? The time, what time? Perfect. And how do I continue? What time? I'm talking about my routine every day. What time? And hopefully they'll say, do you? So you can get the language from students first, and then organize the information on the board for them. And this is the idea of providing frames. Many times when we think about speaking activities and we think about the class we have, we feel in doubt of doing those speaking activities or not, because we have the impression that some students are going to be able to do it and most of them won't. They won't speak English, they won't perform the activity, so it's going to be like a flop in class. But if you give them the scaffolding here, if you give them this written support on the board, it's easier for them. And then we have both realities in class. Those students that are more fluent, Faye's joining us. Those students that are more fluent and can express themselves more naturally, sometimes because they have more contact with English or because they have more classes after school and etc. They're going to use the scaffolding we give. They're going to use this reference we give and go a little bit beyond because they are more fluent, they speak more naturally. But those ones that don't feel so confident or are not so fluent in English, at least they have how to start, continue, and finish the conversation, right? If they can't improvise, expand, fine. They have beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
So these frames, these pieces of language on the board are going to be the scaffolding for those students that may need, okay?
Okay.
After that, we can model out and ask ICQs. And I think this is what will help you, for example, with the second graders, the one that are not fluent in reading. You may have the written language on the board for those that can refer to it, but you're modeling out, you're practicing with the group, will give them the sound, and then they'll be able to follow better. So the idea is, after you try to get the language from them, organize these pieces of language they're going to use on the board, you tell them, look, let's see an example. And tell them very clearly that you are giving them an example so they understand that this is how the conversation they're going to have is supposed to go. And then it can be the whole group talking to you, or you can choose a student, okay, to be your partner in this conversation. Let me just say hello to Tatiana. Tati, can you hear us? If you can, just show me thumbs up or say okay. Are you still connecting? Let me see. Can you hear us now, Tati?
Yes.
Perfect. Very good.
Sorry, it's because the link wasn't working, so I got a little late.
Okay, that's okay. I can tell you where we're at now, Tati. I was just introducing 4 steps for when we are working with speaking activities, with communication in class, okay? I'm going to start from there again. If you have any trouble, let me know. Okay, so let me go back to that. So Tati, we talked about step 1, setting the context and the task in a meaningful and engaging way. I was asking Amanda to compare when I say, as a teacher, I say, okay, students, so let's practice. And when I say something like, let's talk about what we have in our backpacks. Let's compare the materials we have and see if we have the same or if we have different things. Which one sounds more engaging to students? So this is for the first example. Think of a way you can get students curious, engaged in communicating with each other and getting more information about each other. Then the second one, trying to elicit the language they're going to use and providing frames on the board. So the idea is, we are going to talk about the materials we have in our backpacks. So what is the question again we use to know if our friend has an eraser, a pencil case, a book, and etc.? And try to see if the students can give you the question, like, teacher, do you have a book? So always try to elicit from students first. Of course, if they don't give you what you're expecting, you can provide, okay? But always give them a chance first, because we need to give them more credit. Sometimes we don't, as they deserve. So try students first. If they can't remember the language to use or the word, the expression, then you can provide. The frames on the board are these pieces of language, like, do you have, yes, I do, no, I don't. These pieces of language that we give students to guide their conversation, okay? So organize these on the board. If you are teaching online or if you're teaching hybrid, you can prepare a slide before And then you can share the slide with people that are online, and the other ones can see it projected on the TV or on the board, if you have something like that, okay? So we are in the third step, the idea of modeling out. They need to see an example of how the conversation is supposed to go. So it's important for the teacher to show this example to students. So let's use the backpack context, okay? In our example here. You invite the class, okay, let's see an example with the teacher. Ask me about my backpack. And then you can have the group ask you questions. Ah, teacher, do you have an eraser? Yes, I do. Do you have a book? Yes, I do. So you perform the conversation with the group so they can see exactly what they are supposed to do. And then, Tati, let me just go back one slide here. Something that we saw before you arrived is try always to think before class, think of what conversation your students could have, considering their age, their grade, that could be natural, more natural in English. So for this lesson about backpacks, I suggested this one. So tell me about your backpack. Do you have, a student would say, yes, I do. The other one could make a comment, nice, or cool. No, I don't. Ah, okay. And then continue the conversation. What about you? Do you have, and ask more questions until they get to the end of it, and then always thank each other for that. Ah, thank you, okay? Something important that we also discussed before you arrived. The conversation you plan, you imagine, should always take into consideration the students you have. So I was telling Amanda, if you think that, so tell me about your backpack, this first moment here to start the conversation would be too difficult for your second graders, make it easier. You can say, for example, so do you have, and go straight to the question. If you think that 2 comments would be too much, yes, I do, nice, cool, interesting, work with 1 only. So just nice or just cool. So these conversations you imagine will always be based on how much your students can do at that point they are, okay? So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back here. This is the example, the modeling out. Then always ask ICQs, okay? ICQs are instruction checking questions. So I'm going to ask questions to see if my students understood my instructions, okay? It goes like this, an example like this. Okay, so what are you supposed to do? Are you going to work in pairs or in trios? And then students confirm, teacher, in pairs, good. Are you going to speak or are you going to listen? And the students will answer, teacher, speak and listen, right? Because I have to listen to my friends. Yes, perfect, okay. What is the question you ask to start the conversation? And hopefully they'll look at the board, remember the example, say, so tell me about your backpack. Do you have, good. How do I answer again? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Okay. What comments can I make? Nice, cool, okay. So you revisit a little bit your instructions, you ask questions to confirm students' comprehension. When they say, prepared, something that set them up for success is to give them thinking time. What is thinking time? 1 minute or 2 minutes in silence for them to prepare only in their heads what they are going to say. In this example, for instance, going back here, they have time to look at each object here and mark yes or no, thinking of their backpacks in silence. Just think about your backpacks, okay? So they can start preparing to say, yes, I do, no, I don't, because they have the information there prepared for them. In this example for the 7th grade, they have some time, 1 or 2 minutes in silence to write down the time they do. Get up, I think 7, no, 6:30, have lunch, maybe midday, no, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So they mentally prepare to answer the questions, okay? They're going to be doing 2 things at the same time. One, remembering the true answer about themselves. Is it 6:30? Is it 6:40, 45? What is it the time I get up again? So they prepare the information. 2, how to say in English, because they're going to say something like 6:35, 6:35, 6. Teacher, how can I say 30 in English? I forgot. 30. Okay, so 6:35. So this moment is important because of this. They can prepare, they can rehearse in their heads, and you can help the students that need. Okay, so for example, Tati has a question, how to say something in English. Amanda doesn't remember how to say the time in English. Okay, so you can help students individually if necessary. Okay, think about it. If you have these 4 steps before they start the conversation, before they start the speaking activities, students are more likely to develop well, because you got them engaged, you got them curious about what they're going to discuss, what they're going to talk about. They have the language support on the board, they have the pieces of language they can use, how they can react. The conversation you designed has beginning, middle, end, so it makes sense, it is meaningful for students. They saw an example with the teacher, they confirmed if they understood the instructions with your ICQs, and they had a minute or 2 to think, prepare, ask all the how can I say questions that they have, okay? When you say, all right, let's start, most students are going to do well. We always have those ones that are going to need extra support depending on the lesson, on the topic, but you are giving them more chances of being successful when you follow the 4 steps we have here, okay? All right, let's keep going. So I told you before that we have explicit moments of conversation in the books we use. About you, tell your partner, work in pairs, show your partner. So you have very explicit moments. But now what I'd like to ask you is always to keep an eye for opportunities, because they can be everywhere. Sometimes we think that we can only work with the speaking skill when there is a speaking activity in the book, but not. We can work with the speaking every lesson. And then again, I brought something from BNCC for us to read. Remember that we have BNCC brings us 4 aspects for us to work with in class, right? We have reading, we have writing, we have communication, what they call oralidade, right? We have language knowledge, conhecimentos linguísticos, and we also have culture, okay, dimensão cultural. So these are the 5 aspects, okay, BNCC brings us. But look at what they say in this document. É imprescindível dizer que esses eixos, embora tratados de forma separada na explicitação da BNCC, estão intrinsecamente ligados nas práticas sociais de usos da língua inglesa e devem ser assim trabalhados nas situações de aprendizagem propostas no contexto escolar. What does that mean? It is not because they talk about these 5 aspects that I'm going to separate them in class. For example, today we're going to work only with reading. There's no speaking, there's no writing, there's no communication, there's no language structure, it's only reading today. Today is only grammar, just talking about structure today, nothing else. Today we're only talking about culture, nothing else. It's impossible to do it in an English class, right? Everything is connected. So we can think the same when we consider speaking opportunities. Any kind of class you are preparing, if it's something that is more focused on reading, something that is more focused on listening, something that is more focused on grammar, whatever class you are preparing, we can find opportunities for meaningful communication, okay? And I brought some examples for us to see. Look at this one. This is for third graders. They are talking about houses. They're learning how to describe their house. And this is the first page of the lesson. They have a picture and they have to check where they live, whether it's in a house or in an apartment. The first time we look at this page of the book, we can think, it's just a picture. Students, just check the box. So I can do that in 2 minutes. But if we put on our speaking glasses, looking for communicative opportunities, this is an opportunity here. I can imagine my students in third grade having this conversation. Hi, so do you live in a house or in an apartment? And the other one says, I live in an apartment. Nice. Is it big or small? It's big. What about you? Do you live in a house or in an apartment? And then we go back. I live in an apartment. Nice. Is it big or small? It's small. Okay, thanks. So we can do that. After they look at the picture, we exploit the picture, they check the item in the book. We can continue this moment here by having students work in pairs or standing up and asking many friends in class. You can have a survey to see if there are more students living in a house or more students living in an apartment. So they ask and they keep counting how many said yes, how many said houses, how many said apartment. So this is something you can do. You look at the book and you try always to find opportunities for communication, meaningful communication. I'm going to learn something more about my friend. And I'm going to repeat what I said before. When you are writing down this conversation that you imagine your students can have, think of the group. For example, maybe expanding the conversation with this part. Is it big or small? It's too much for my third graders in the morning. So with my third graders in the morning, I'm going to do, so do you live in a house or in an apartment? I live in a house. Okay, thanks. 3 lines. That's how much my third graders can handle. But my third graders in the afternoon are a little bit ahead, so I can expand a little bit with them. I'm going to have this second question. Is it big or small? And then have them continue the conversation, okay? For this to work, again, we need those 4 steps. So I need to set the context and the task in a meaningful and engaging way. I could, for example, ask my students, remember, we use all of our body language and facial expressions to get them even more engaged and curious. But to go like, I wonder if the students in this class live in a house or in an apartment, but shh, don't tell me, secret, because you are going to tell your friend. And then we are going to count how many students live in a house, how many in an apartment, okay? I didn't say let's practice or let's use the vocabulary or anything like that. I have a real question. I want to know if my students, most of my students live in a house or in an apartment. So engage them, get them curious. Say, what do you think? More students living in a house or more students living in an apartment? Let's see, who thinks most of students live in a house? Raise your hands. Apartment, raise your hands. So now we have to confirm. Let's see if you're right. So you get them motivated to communicate. Then again, elicit the language. If I think my students in the third grade can give me, do you live? I'll try to elicit. So what question can I ask to know if my friend lives in a house or in an apartment? Try to get from them. If they give it to you, organize the language on the board. If not, you don't know how to ask, so I am going to show you. I'm going to show you something new today. In English, we ask this way. And again, language on the board, okay? These frames, this structure of the conversation. Model out again. So class, let's see an example with the teacher. First you ask me, okay? Let's try, 1, 2, 3. So teacher, do you live in a house or in an apartment? And you can even point to the board for them to know the sequence of the conversation you are suggesting. Okay, so they ask the question, you say, I live in a house. And sometimes, many times, students go quiet, right? You say, I live in a house. And again, you can use humor a little bit. No comments? Are you happy, sad? You like that I live in a house or not? There are some options here. Nice, good. Then encourage them to say something. Ah, teacher, okay, nice, good. Thank you. How can you continue? Ask me if it's big or small. And they go, is it big or small, teacher? Ah, it's big, it's very big. And then you model out the conversation. Use the ICQs again. Give them time to think so they can check the box in the book. They can prepare to ask the question, rehearse in their minds. They can remember if their house is big or small, or they can ask you how to say, ah, teacher, mais ou menos. So how do I say that in English? Maybe I'll have to introduce mid-sized. It's not big, it's not small, it's mid-sized. So it always depends on the students we have there with us. But this thinking time will give us a chance to help those who need extra help before they start speaking. Okay? Does that make sense? Can you see this happening in class? Yeah, perfect.
Sure.
All right, let's see another one. We have lots of bingo moments in class, right? When you look, especially when you look at Maker Kids, Fundamental 2, you don't have much, but Fundamental 1, you have lots of bingo suggestions. And they love bingo, which is great. They get engaged, they like playing the game, they like winning, awesome. But most of the time, bingo focuses on word level. So they write words or they put stickers that refer to one word and etc. This one, for example, from third grade, it's a bingo for food and drink. So they draw or they stick, actually stickers, they stick some food items, some drinks they have. So we can play the bingo, have fun with the game, okay, for them to review, to remember the words and etc. After the game, they can have a meaningful conversation. They can go over each of the squares they have here in the bingo chart where they have either food or drink, and they can say this, point and say, for example, let's suppose I have pizza. I eat pizza for dinner. What about you? And the other one can say, ah, me too. I eat pizza for dinner, or not me. It's a meaningful conversation. I'm learning more about my friend's habits. I am finding similarities. Ah, we like pizza for dinner, yes. Or maybe we like pizza for breakfast. I found a friend who likes pizza for breakfast too. So I create this moment. The first time I look at it, no conversation at all, just bingo. But if I think a little bit more about how I can create a meaningful opportunity here, perfect for them to discuss. And then the same goes for the language you're going to choose. This is the conversation I imagined for a third grade group that I know. I know they can handle that. I know they can say it. But maybe you want to adapt a little bit. Instead of using I eat, drink for breakfast, for lunch, for a snack, for dinner, maybe you want to work with I like, I don't like, because that's how much your students know at that point. So, I like this. Me too. Maybe what about you is a long chunk for students in your third grade to remember to use. So let's use and you. It's okay. It's a shorter one for them to get started. Okay. Always remember to work on how it sounds. So instead of having them focus on what, about, you, I teacher what, okay, in English, about. Okay, guys, listen to me. What about you? This whole chunk in English, what about you, is the same as and you, okay? Two alternatives for the same thing. What about you? And they tend, especially third graders, they tend to get the sound, okay? I'll give you a quick example. I have a 4-year-old son. He likes basketball and he watches basketball on TV, and there's a game they play on PlayStation 2. Something that the referee in the game says many times is out of bounds, out of bounds, when the ball goes outside the court. So they have to stop the game and start again. So what he listens is out of bounds. For him, it's one word, out of bounds. And because the game is in English, he got this expression. So sometimes we are playing in the court together, and the ball goes outside the court, he looks at me and says, "Mommy, out of bounds." Actually, he says, "Mine, out of bounds." Because he got it. This is how it sounds, out of bounds. The ball is over there. We have to stop the game and start again. So the same with what about you? They're going to get this as an expression, what about you, and understand how to use. But you can introduce little by little, okay? Again, we need to remember the 4 steps for this moment to happen. So right after they play bingo, we can say, "So, you see that you have lots of drinks, food. Let's see if you like the same things, or let's see if you eat the same for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner." Engage your students. What can I say when I want to tell my friend that that food in the book, that picture is something that I have for breakfast? Go to the board. I eat or I have for breakfast. What about midday at school? What is the name again? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner? So I can use lunch too. I can use dinner. And build the language on the board with them. Give a very organized reference for the conversation. Model out with the student or with the whole group. Give them an example of the conversation. Give them time to look at the pictures again. Decide if it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. Are you prepared? Let's start, okay? And of course, as they talk to each other, you are walking around, you are offering extra help if it's the case, or you are just encouraging, like, "Well done, very good, fantastic," so they can keep going, okay? Sounds possible? It does? Okay, all right. So let's look a little bit at this other one here. Drawing. And again, we look and say, but this is just drawing. They're going to draw color. They're going to drop all the colored pencils on the floor and then pick them up to continue coloring. Those drawing moments we have in class, right? But again, I can look at it and say, I think there is an opportunity here. They can show each other what they drew and describe it. So it could be a conversation like this. "So tell me about your desk. Is it messy or neat?" It's neat. I have my book, my pencil case, and my bottle of water on my desk. Really? Cool. Nice. What about you? Is your desk messy or neat? Again, make choices. Maybe my 2nd grade will be able to do this. Show the book and say, "I have a book, a pencil case, a bottle of water." And you, the other student, "I have an eraser, a notebook, and a ruler." Okay, they communicated. They compared their pictures. They spoke English for a meaningful purpose. So it's okay. The conversation depends on your group, okay? Again, always think of the 4 steps, okay, you can work with. An example from Fundamental 2. You have a writing activity here. Let me read it for you because I think it's small. It says, "Complete the school fact file for Brazil. Use the information about your school. You can also ask your teacher or look for information on the internet." So they have to write about their schools, years of formal education, school hours, subjects, break, after school activities, interesting fact. So this is going to be probably a quiet moment because they're going to be thinking about their school and writing the answers, right? As soon as they finish, it can become an opportunity for communication. They talk together about their school. So it could be something like this. "I'd like to know more about your school. What subjects do you study?" The other one will answer looking at the book, right? "Is there a break? How long is it? Can you do any activities after school? Are there any interesting facts about your school? Great, sounds like a nice school, sounds like a great school. Thank you." So you see, beginning, middle, and something that is more natural that I have to think of before. That's why I always recommend writing down the kind of conversation your students could have. And we go over the same steps. Let's get your students engaged. Let's get them curious about what they're going to learn from each other. For this one, for example, you can even challenge them to see if they got to the same conclusions, because they all study at the same school, right? So let's see if you really know your school, if you have the same answers. Elicit the language. So what question can I ask to know the subjects you study? What question can I ask to know if you have a break? Maybe here, instead of is there a break, they're going to tell you, do you have a break at school? It's another question. Do you have a break between classes? Accept the contributions they give you. And if necessary, you adjust a little bit. If the English doesn't sound really okay, adjust a little bit for them to use. Here, for example, can you do any activities after school? Maybe they're going to tell you, are there any activities after school? So again, try to get from them first, okay? And then you help and you provide as needed, okay? What do you think? Do you see your students having this conversation here with the reference on the board to help them? Yeah, all right. Again, same steps, okay, for it to have more chances of being successful. Another one here, you look at this, it's number 4 here on the top. I'm gonna read it for you. This is 8th grade. You look and say, oh, this is just a grammar activity. No way, there's no communication here. Look, it says, you are taking an English course. Read each answer and ask a question with how many are there or how much is there? So countable, uncountable, how many, how much? Oh my God, I'm just going to do this grammar activity and go straight to the next part because they don't like grammar. Fine, go over the grammar, do the exercise you have here to see if they understood or not. But then they can prepare to have this moment and answer these questions with true information about themselves. Because you have questions like this. The first one is, how many classes per week are there? Still talking about school. How many students are there in your class? How much lab work is there? How much homework is there? So everything they have at school. So you can tell them, look, let's talk about your school now. Let's see if you have a lot of homework, if you have many tests, if you have a lot of free time or a little free time. Get them engaged, curious, and again, let's work with a frame on the board. So it can be something like this. Listen, tell me about your English course. The questions are prepared in the book because they did the grammar exercise. You corrected the grammar exercise, so the questions are prepared. That's why on the board, you can only have question. Choose a question in the book for you to ask. Letter B, answer. Because again, the answer is also prepared in the book. I just have to change the number. For example, how many classes per week are there? There are 6 classes per week. I may say there are 2 classes per week. There are 4 classes per week. Then we'll help the students with that in the modeling out. Teach your students to show interest, to make comments, to say, oh, really? Nice, interesting, cool. Oh, I see. If it's something that is not really good. Because, for example, if they say, there's not much free time, I'm afraid. Nice. Not the right comment for this answer here. There's not much free time. Maybe, oh, I see. Or, that's not so good. You teach them other strategies, okay? So again, you can organize the language on the board for them. With your modeling out, you can show how they can change the information to make it true for themselves. And you can give some thinking time. Think about what you're going to say. Think about your English course. How many classes, how much homework? I'll give you a minute. Walk around, have the ones that need, and then you start the speaking moment. So you see that anywhere you look at the book, sometimes the communicative opportunity is very explicit. Sometimes it's not. But if you have this perspective, let me find moments my students can communicate meaningfully. You can create those moments, okay? Out of a bingo, out of a grammar exercise, out of a listening, or out of a writing activity. You choose. And there is more. Something else that can also become a meaningful communication moment is peer help. One student helping the other. So I brought an example here. Imagine that you have this listening activity in the book. They have to listen, connect, and write. So they connect the boy, Leonardo, to the food that he likes, and they connect the girl, Luisa, to the food she likes, and then complete here in the book. It tends to be a quiet moment because they listen, they connect in the book, then they write the words. So it's a moment for concentration, which is okay. Sometimes we need quiet moments in class for them to concentrate, for them to have the time to write things down. After that, before we correct the activity with the whole class, we can have a moment of pair work for students to compare the answer, one helping the other. And then this could be what they can say. For instance, so what do you have for Leonardo? Leonardo likes this, this, and that. Yes, I think you're right, because I have the same answers in my book. Or, I'm not sure. Or, I don't know. I think Leonardo likes, and then I give my opinion. See, this one is different. Okay, what do you have for Luisa? Luisa likes this, this, and that. Yes, I think you're right. Or again, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think Luisa likes, it should be Luisa here. Luisa likes, da-da-da. So you see, you are correcting an activity, but because you are putting them in pairs to compare the answers, see if they understood the same thing, to help each other, maybe one has a space in blank and the friend can help. It's another moment for communication, meaningful communication. I'm using English to help my friend with the activity or to help myself because I couldn't understand everything, okay? Again, if you decide to do something like this, they need the frames on the board for them to use English to communicate with each other. Always give this support on the board to guide their conversation, especially considering that you have mixed ability groups at the schools where you teach, right? You have those ones that could do it without your help. They can speak English to each other with maybe just a little help. And the other ones who need more, they need a lot of support because they don't have so much contact with English outside school, right? And again, you can make it simpler. You can have, what do you have for Leonardo? One student answers. What do you have for Luisa? Another student's answers. Done. They don't expand so much, okay? Always think of your group. But these moments of peer help to check a grammar activity, a listening activity, a reading activity, you can promote this kind of interaction. What's your answer for letter A? What do you have for letter A? What did you write in letter B? So they can communicate in English at the same time they're helping each other with the activity, okay? Another opportunity, classroom language, as always, okay? You have a lot of interaction in class and a lot of interaction that you're very familiar with. For example, que página, teacher? Que book? Lápis azul, verde, no papel, no caderno, põe a data, vai pouquinho mais para lá, dá licença. All of these things that we have in class that happens every class, you can prepare for it because they are also very meaningful opportunities for communication. So having something in class like this, having a poster with classroom language, having some signs around the class. I don't know how it works in your school, but if you can decorate the classroom a little bit with English, maybe not the whole class, but you have like an English corner for you to keep things for your students. It's super important. And there's something again from BNCC that I'm going to bring you here. They say something like this, look. Itens lexicais, estruturas linguísticas utilizadas, pronúncia, entonação, ritmo empregados, everything that we prepare for the language part, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, intonation, etc. Good. Now, acrescidos de estratégias de compreensão, compreensão global, específica, detalhada, estratégias de acomodação, resolução de conflitos, de negociação, solicitação de esclarecimentos, confirmações, uso de paráfrases, exemplificações, constituem aspectos relevantes na configuração e na exploração dessas práticas. all of this that we have here, excuse me, teacher, can you speak more slowly, please? Is this okay? Can you explain that again? How do you spell this word in English? When is the test? What page are we on? Which book, teacher? All of these are strategies, okay? Strategies to ask for repetition, to ask for clarification, to confirm information, to negotiate. So they are very meaningful opportunities for communication here, very meaningful. If you can help your students by providing this language around and make it consistent in class. So every time they say, que página, you say, what page? Or what page are we on? For them to start using this language in English, the better, okay? Because then they will actually use English to communicate. So that's another opportunity here. So girls, my point here today is create those moments, those opportunities for meaningful communication, okay? I think this paragraph of BNCC summarizes the gains, the benefits of working with communication in class. So I'm going to read it for you. Além disso, a oralidade também proporciona o desenvolvimento de uma série de comportamentos e atitudes, como arriscar-se e se fazer compreender, dar voz e vez ao outro. What about you? Entender e acolher a perspectiva do outro. Nice, not me. I don't know. Yes, you're right. Superar mal-entendidos e lidar com a insegurança, por exemplo. So when we work with the speaking class, in all of these opportunities, it's not only repeating to train pronunciation or repetition of vocabulary for memorization, not this kind of speaking, really meaningful communication moments. We are developing all of this because when we communicate with each other, we have to do all of this, right? We have to explain ourselves better. Sometimes we have to repeat. Sometimes we need to ask for clarification. We agree, we disagree. We wait for our turn to speak. We give the turn to the other people to speak. So we work with all of these strategies. Of course, always appropriate to the level, first grade, second grade, third grade, seventh, eighth, and etc. Always consider how old students are, but take this into consideration. I think that if you can have one moment each class, so out of your 50 minutes or your 45 minutes with the students, if you can plan one moment for this kind of meaningful communication, you notice that you start building this language with your students, this atmosphere, and you'll be able to do it more and more, okay? And it changes the atmosphere of the class and it changes how they see the use of English, okay? So thank you so very much for coming, for staying here. This is my email. If you want to talk a little bit more about it, it'll be a pleasure. You can write me at any time. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask before you go, okay? Thank you so much.
Sorry
Thank
that I had to
you.
be at the mute and without the mic, everything off because I'm at school yet.
That's okay. Don't worry. The important is being here. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Veruska. I miss you so much. And at
Thank
school.
you too, Amanda.
Yeah.
Ask Renata to call me. I'll go there to meet you girls. Call Veruska here.
It's going to be a pleasure.
I'll be more than glad.
For me, it was very enlightening, especially with the grammar exercises, how to make them a little bit less boring, you know, because sometimes they are just like, oh my God, grammar again.
Yes.
You know, so it's really hard, but it was very nice. Thank you very much, Veruska.
You're more
it
than
was
welcome.
really good.
We have to admit that we are language lovers and we love grammar to study the structure, the parts, and etc. But think of students. Not everybody's a language lover.
I was talking in the 9th grade today, and we were talking about regular verbs and irregular verbs because I was introducing present perfect, and they, oh my God, in English too. No, I don't like that. It was really funny. It was really funny. And I said, okay, I have bad news and good news. What do you guys want first? And then, okay, teacher, bad news. Open the book on this page. This is the list that you have to memorize. Oh my God, what are the good news, teacher? And I said, Well, the good news is after you memorize this, everything else is regular. Ooh.
Really, right?
Okay, so that's not so bad, Jeffrey. Not so bad at all.
No, that's true. But you see, we have to find ways to make them feel good about English. Because again, the students that love English, they are easy students to teach because they love it, they're interested, they are engaged. But we have to think of the ones that don't feel really good in English classes, language classes. And then how can I get this student here to feel a bit more comfortable? I always think of myself in physics, in chemistry class, how I feel. I don't like it. So it was difficult.
I feel like I'm in the Lost Island.
Yes, yes. Let's try to think of that. Some of my students will feel like I feel when I'm learning chemistry, when I'm learning physics. So I have to make it a little bit more engaging, right?
Yeah, but English is much more, it's easier, it's a lot easier to make engaging than physics and chemistry.
I agree, totally agree.
Me too.
Okay, girls.
I have to leave because I'm going to the coordinator's meeting. Yes. So bye-bye. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye, girls.
Thanks a lot. Bye, girls.
Thanks, bye.